The wind off Lake Michigan cut through downtown Chicago like a blade, sharp and restless, rattling through the canyon of glass towers that lined Wacker Drive. Late November had painted the city in muted grays and dying golds, and outside the towering headquarters of Sterling Dynamics, a small figure sat alone on the wide marble steps, as if she had been forgotten by the world. Her name was Lily Carter. She couldn't have been more than 7. Her legs, too short to reach the ground, swung slightly above the stone below, back and forth, like she was trying to soothe herself. A pale pink coat hung off her shoulders, too thin for the cold. In her arms, she clutched a worn, stuffed bunny with one floppy ear and a missing button eye. The toy looked like it had been loved hard for a long time. People flowed past her in endless waves. Men in tailored suits spoke into Bluetooth headsets, their voices brisk and impatient. Women in high heels rushed by, clutching coffee cups and designer handbags like shields. Security guards stood near the revolving doors, alert to threats, but blind to sadness. No one stopped. No one asked if she was okay. Lily hugged her bunny tighter, her small fingers trembling, not just from the cold, but from something heavier. The kind of quiet loneliness that settles deep in the chest. Her green eyes followed the crowds, searching, hoping, afraid. She wasn't lost, but she felt like she was. Across the street, traffic snarled. Inside the building, millions of dollars were being traded, decisions made that could shift markets and shape futures. But out here, on the cold marble steps, a little girl was invisible. Then someone noticed. Ethan Brooks had just finished fixing a broken door hinge on the west side of the building when he saw her. At 44, Ethan carried himself with the quiet, grounded confidence of a man who had seen too much and survived it. His maintenance uniform was faded at the elbows, his steel-toed boots scuffed from years of honest work. A name patch stitched over his chest read simply, Brooks. His eyes, sharp and observant, caught what everyone else missed. The way Lily's shoulders were curled inward, the way she held that stuffed bunny like a lifeline, the way her gaze was too tired for someone so young. That posture, he recognized it. He had seen it in the mirror after his wife died. He saw it every morning in his son's face. Ethan slowed, then stopped. He knelt in front of Lily carefully so he wouldn't startle her, his movements gentle and deliberate. "Hey there," he said softly. "You okay?" Lily didn't answer. She just stared at him with those wide, wounded eyes, wary but curious. Ethan nodded slowly like he understood. "Yeah, some days are like that." He set down his brown paper lunch bag and opened it. Inside was a turkey and Swiss sandwich wrapped neatly in wax paper. He'd made it himself before dawn, the same way he did every morning for his son Noah. Same bread, same cheese, same careful hands. Ethan unwrapped it and without hesitation tore it in half. He held out the bigger piece to Lily. "Looks like you could use this more than I can." For a moment she didn't move. Then hesitantly, she reached out. Her fingers were icy as they brushed against his calloused palm. She took the sandwich like it might disappear if she didn't hold on tight. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely louder than the wind. "I'm Ethan," he said with a small, warm smile. "What's your name?" "Lily. Nice to meet you, Lily." He sat down beside her on the cold stone. "Mind if I join you for lunch?" She nodded. They ate in quiet, side by side. The city roared around them, but in that small space it felt almost peaceful. Ethan glanced at the stuffed bunny. "That little guy looks like he's been through a lot." Lily looked down at it. "His name is Mr. Buttons. He lost his eye being brave." "Sounds like a real hero." Her lips twitched into the faintest smile. "My daddy gave him to me before he went away." Ethan's chest tightened. "Your dad sounds like he knew how to pick good protectors." "He was the bravest person in the world," Lily said softly. "Mommy says so, but he didn't come back." The words hit Ethan like a quiet punch. He didn't ask questions. He didn't need to. Grief had its own language, and children spoke it in simple truths. Behind them, across the street, a black sedan had pulled to the curb. A man inside lifted a camera, zoomed in, and took a photo of the maintenance worker and the little girl sharing a sandwich on the steps of a billion-dollar building. Ethan and Lily didn't notice. But somewhere, far above them, in an office lined with glass and steel, someone very powerful was about to see that picture, and everything was about to change. Long before the sun climbed over the Chicago skyline, Ethan Brooks was already awake. His small apartment on the south side was quiet. The kind of stillness that only existed before the city took its first breath of the day. The heater clicked softly against the cold. Old pipes groaned in the walls. Everything in the place carried the gentle wear of a life stretched thin, but held together by stubborn love. Ethan moved through the narrow kitchen with practiced care. He poured black coffee into a chipped mug and lined up 3 small pill bottles beside a blue inhaler on the counter. They were always in the same order. Routine was how he kept fear from taking over. Down the short hallway, a door creaked open. "Dad?" Ethan turned. Noah Brooks, 7 years old, stood in the doorway in pajamas that were 2 sizes too big. His brown hair was a wild mess, and his eyes, bright, curious, far too observant, were fixed on his father. "Morning, champ," Ethan said, his tired face softening. "How's the breathing today?" "Good," Noah said, tapping his chest. "Only coughed once." Ethan let out a quiet breath of relief. "That's my strong kid." Noah shuffled over to the table and climbed into his chair. His gaze drifted to the brown paper lunch bag sitting near the door. It looked flatter than usual. "You didn't make yourself a sandwich again, did you?" Noah asked, his voice serious. Ethan froze for half a second, then smiled. "What makes you think that?" "Your bag's empty," Noah said. "And you always tell me soldiers need fuel." Ethan ruffled his son's hair. "Mrs. Turner next door gave me leftovers. I'll be fine." It was a lie, but it was a kind one. What Noah didn't know was that the turkey sandwich he had watched his dad make that morning was now half gone, sitting in the hands of a little girl on some marble steps downtown. Ethan packed Noah's lunch with careful precision. Apple slices, a juice box, a note that read, "You're braver than you know. Love, Dad." Then he reached for the stack of mail waiting on the counter. Bills, medical statements, past due notices, pharmacy receipts. The numbers didn't lie. Noah's inhalers, checkups, and medications were bleeding them dry. Ethan stared at the latest prescription cost and clenched his jaw. $48 left until payday. The refill alone cost more than that. He slipped the last 20 into Noah's backpack anyway. "Bus will be here in 10, Ethan said, forcing cheer into his voice. "Get moving, soldier." Noah saluted. "Yes, sir." After the door closed behind him, Ethan leaned against the counter, eyes shut, shoulders slumping for just a moment. Grief and exhaustion pressed down like a weight on his chest. A photo on the fridge caught his eye. 2 men in desert camo, arms slung over each other's shoulders, smiling like the world wasn't full of danger. Ethan on one side, Daniel Carter on the other. The words at the bottom read, "Brothers forever." "I'm still keeping my promise," Ethan murmured. 2 hours later, he stood back in the gleaming lobby of Sterling Dynamics. He fixed a loose tile near the front doors, but his mind kept drifting back to Lily, her quiet voice, her brave little bunny, the way she had held that half sandwich like it was something precious. Then the doors opened. A woman stepped inside who didn't belong to the everyday rush. Rebecca Carter moved through the lobby like she owned the air itself. Dark hair pulled back, tailored coat flawless, eyes sharp and commanding. Security guards straightened. Assistants froze. Rebecca's gaze landed on Ethan. "Mr. Brooks," she said coolly, "we need to talk." Minutes later, he was standing inside an office that looked out over the entire city. Glass walls, polished wood, power in every detail. Rebecca slid a photo across the desk. It was him and Lily on the steps. "You know who that little girl is," she said. Ethan swallowed. "Your daughter. She's been missing for hours," Rebecca said, her voice tight beneath the steel. "And you were the last person seen with her." Ethan met her. The air inside Rebecca Carter's office felt colder than the November wind outside. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the Chicago skyline like a living painting. But Rebecca wasn't looking at the city. Her eyes were locked on Ethan Brooks, sharp, calculating, guarded. The woman who ran one of the most powerful tech companies in America did not miss details, and right now, every instinct in her was telling her this man was more than a simple maintenance worker. "You were with my daughter," she said, her voice crisp, controlled. "Tell me exactly what happened." Ethan stood straight, his hands relaxed at his sides, the posture of someone trained not to look threatening. "She was sitting alone on the steps outside, cold, scared. I gave her half my lunch and sat with her. That's all." Rebecca's lips pressed into a thin line. "You expect me to believe you just happened to find Lily outside my building on the same day she disappeared from her security detail?" "I don't expect you to believe anything," Ethan replied evenly, "but it's the truth." Silence stretched between them, thick and uncomfortable. Then Rebecca leaned forward, her gaze piercing. "Do you know who I am?" "Yes, ma'am," Ethan said. "Rebecca Carter, CEO of Sterling Dynamics." "And do you know who my husband was?" The question hit him like a quiet explosion. "Daniel Carter," Ethan said slowly, "my commanding officer." The shift in Rebecca's expression was almost imperceptible, but it was there. A flicker, a fracture in the ice. "So you recognize his name," she said. "Then you understand why I'm not inclined to trust you." "I understand why you're angry," Ethan replied. But Lily had nothing to do with that. She was just a kid who needed someone to sit with her. Rebecca turned away, crossing to the window. From this height, the city looked small and manageable, like a chessboard. But grief didn't follow the rules of power. "She ran away from her nanny this morning," Rebecca said quietly. "Security couldn't find her for hours, and you just happened to be there." Ethan hesitated. "She looked the way my son did after his mom died, like the world had stopped making sense." That got her attention. Rebecca turned back, studying him in a different way now, not as a threat, but as something more dangerous. Someone who understood. "Your wife," she said. "She passed away 3 years ago. Car accident. Drunk driver." Ethan stiffened. "You did your homework." "I always do," Rebecca said. "People think I'm cold because I don't show my feelings. The truth is, I built walls because they were the only thing that kept Lily and me standing." A knock interrupted them. A small voice slipped through the door before anyone could stop it. "Mommy?" Rebecca's breath caught. Lily ran inside, Mr. Buttons tucked under her arm. Her green eyes lit up when she saw Ethan. "Sandwich man," Rebecca stared. "Lily, how did you—" "I told them I had important business," Lily said proudly, "and I used the back stairs." Rebecca knelt, pulling her daughter into her arms like she might disappear again if she let go. For a moment, the powerful CEO vanished, leaving only a frightened mother. When Lily finally pulled back, she looked at Ethan. "I made you something." She handed him a crayon drawing. 3 figures holding hands. A tall man, a woman, and a little girl surrounded by clouds. "That's my family," Lily explained. "Daddy lives in the sky now." Rebecca pressed a hand to her mouth. Ethan knelt. "That's beautiful, Lily." She tilted her head. "Do you have a family?" "I have a son. His name's Noah. He draws dinosaurs with laser eyes." Her face lit up. "I want to meet him." Rebecca smiled, just a little. Later, after Lily left with her nanny, Rebecca sat across from Ethan, her voice softer now. "There's something wrong inside this company," she said, "and Daniel died because of it." Ethan felt the old ache in his chest flare. "I need someone I can trust," she continued. "Someone who sees what others miss." Ethan thought of Lily on those cold steps, of Noah breathing through an inhaler at night. "I'm listening." Outside, the city kept moving. Inside, 2 broken people were beginning to realize their lives were about to collide in ways neither could escape. Night wrapped Chicago in a soft, glowing haze as the lights from Sterling Dynamics shimmered against the dark river below. Inside Rebecca Carter's office, the mood was anything but calm. The room was lit only by her laptop and a single desk lamp. 2 untouched cups of coffee sat between her and Ethan Brooks, long gone cold. Outside the glass walls, the city pulsed with life, unaware that something dangerous was being uncovered above it. Rebecca exhaled slowly. "I'm going to tell you things no one else in this company knows." Ethan leaned forward, his expression alert, grounded, focused. Years of military training had taught him when a moment mattered. "My husband," Rebecca said quietly, "didn't die because of bad luck or a failed mission." Ethan's jaw tightened. "I always suspected that." "Daniel was developing something called Project Helios," she continued, "a quantum-based security system. It could lock down global networks, protect governments, stop cyber warfare before it starts, and make a lot of people very rich," Ethan added. Rebecca nodded. "And powerful, too powerful for the wrong hands." She pulled up a series of encrypted files. "Someone inside Sterling has been creating backdoors in the system, selling pieces of it to foreign brokers. Daniel found out." Ethan felt a cold burn spread through his chest. "And they silenced him." "Yes." Silence fell between them, heavy and painful. "The person behind it is Victor Hale," Rebecca said, "our chief operations officer. He has access to everything, and he's been covering his tracks for years." Ethan ran a hand through his hair. "Daniel trusted him. That's why he was able to get close," Rebecca replied. "But Daniel was smart. He knew if he went down, he had to leave a trail." She reached into a drawer and pulled out a small worn compass. Ethan froze. "That was his. He gave it to me before Kandahar." He hid something inside it, Rebecca said. A fragment of the encryption key to Helios. Without it, Hale can't fully unlock the system. Ethan took the compass carefully, his hands trembling just slightly. Daniel's voice echoed in his mind. Brothers forever. Rebecca met his gaze. There's more. He looked up. To access Helios completely, Hale needs biometric clearance. Daniel's DNA was part of the system. Ethan swallowed. But Daniel is gone. Yes, which leaves only two possible matches. A chill crept into his bones. You and Lily. Rebecca nodded. He's not just after my company, she whispered. He's after my daughter. The weight of that truth hit Ethan like a punch. Lily, with her brave bunny and quiet smile, had been sitting on those steps completely exposed. We have to protect her, he said firmly. We will, Rebecca replied. But Hale is already moving. He's planning to force a vote to remove me from the company. And then he gets everything, Ethan said. Before Rebecca could respond, Ethan's phone buzzed. A message flashed across the screen. Unknown number. He's watching you. Ethan's instincts flared. We're not alone. Rebecca stood. Then we stopped running. Down in the lobby, Lily hugged Mr. Buttons tighter, unaware that the world was closing in around her. And upstairs, two wounded adults prepared to fight for the one thing that mattered more than power or money, a child's life and a promise made to a fallen brother. By morning, Sterling Dynamics felt different. The bright glass hallways that once symbolized innovation and success now carried an undercurrent of tension, like a storm gathering beneath clear skies. People whispered behind office doors. Security walked with tighter shoulders. Somewhere inside the building, Victor Hale was moving his pieces. Ethan Brooks stood beside Rebecca Carter in her office, both of them watching the city wake up beyond the windows. Neither had slept much. The truth about Project Helios and Lily's danger had burned away any chance of rest. He's going to make his move today, Ethan said, his voice low but steady. Rebecca nodded. He called for an emergency board meeting. Says my leadership has become unstable. That's his way in. Rebecca's jaw tightened. He won't stop at removing me. He needs Lily. Almost on cue, Ethan's phone buzzed again. A photo appeared on the screen. Lily walking down a hallway at school. Below it, a single line of text. We're closer than you think. Ethan's blood went cold. They're watching her, he said. Rebecca grabbed her coat. Then we don't wait. With help from a trusted security chief, Lily was quietly moved to a safe location. Ethan called Noah's school and arranged for his son to stay late with a teacher he trusted. 2 children. 2 innocent lives balanced on the edge of one man's greed. At noon, the boardroom filled. Victor Hale stood at the head of the long table, perfectly composed in his dark suit, his silver hair neat, his smile polished. He spoke with confident ease. Rebecca's absence, her emotional decision-making, and her reckless hiring choices have put Sterling at risk, he said smoothly. For the good of this company, we need new leadership. The doors opened. Rebecca walked in. Ethan was right behind her. A ripple of surprise spread across the room. Victor's smile faltered just a fraction. Rebecca held up Daniel's compass. This belonged to my husband, and inside it is the truth you've been trying to bury. She connected it to the screen. Financial records, offshore accounts, encrypted messages, proof of Project Helios being sold piece by piece. Victor's face drained of color. You've been stealing from this company for years, Rebecca said, and you had my husband killed when he discovered it. That's a lie, Victor snapped. Ethan stepped forward. The FBI disagrees. Agents poured into the room. Victor reached inside his jacket. Ethan moved faster. The gun clattered across the marble floor. Victor was on his knees in seconds, cuffs clicking into place. As he was led away, his eyes burned with hatred. This isn't over. Ethan met his stare. For Lily, it is. Outside, sirens wailed. Inside, Rebecca finally allowed herself to breathe. But the hardest part was still ahead. 2 children were waiting, and everything now depended on what came next. A year later, the marble steps outside Sterling Dynamics looked different. Not because the building had changed, but because the people sitting there had. The Chicago wind was softer that afternoon, carrying the smell of street food in early spring instead of winter's bite. Ethan Brooks sat on the same steps where he had once shared half a sandwich with a lonely little girl. But now he wasn't alone. Beside him was Rebecca Carter, relaxed in a simple coat instead of a power suit. In front of them sat Lily, her once-worn bunny Mr. Buttons, now proudly repaired with a bright blue button eye. And next to her was Noah Brooks, sketching dinosaurs with laser eyes in a notebook balanced on his knees. 4 people, 4 sandwiches, no one going hungry. Dad, Noah said, glancing up, why do we always eat here? Ethan smiled, warm and reflective. Because this is where everything started. This is where a small act of kindness changed our lives. Lily giggled. You gave me your sandwich. I thought you were a secret superhero. Noah looked impressed. He kinda is. Rebecca watched the 2 children together, her eyes soft, her heart full in a way she had never believed possible. For years, she had been a powerful, isolated, emotionally armored woman. But now she was simply a mother sitting in the sun, watching her daughter laugh. You didn't just save my company, Rebecca said quietly to Ethan. You saved my family. Ethan shook his head. You saved mine too. They shared a quiet, meaningful look, one built on trust, sacrifice, and something deeper than either of them had expected. Mr. Button sat between Lily and Noah, guarding them both. He says we're a real family now, Lily announced seriously. Noah nodded. Yeah, the kind that sticks. Rebecca laughed softly. I think he's right. The past hadn't disappeared. Daniel was still gone. Ethan's wife was still gone. But grief no longer defined them. It connected them. It made them gentler, braver, more human. As the afternoon light faded into gold, Lily leaned into Ethan's side. Do you think Daddy Daniel can see us? Ethan swallowed. I think he's proud of us. Rebecca closed her eyes for a moment, letting that truth settle. Then she looked at you. Yes, you, the one watching this story unfold. Do you believe that one small act of kindness can change a life? Would you have shared that sandwich? Because sometimes the simplest choices lead to the most extraordinary endings. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more powerful, emotional stories just like this. You never know. The next story might be the one that changes your life.